Whether the market is up or down, you can still work towards growing and preserving your wealth. Welcome to Retirement Revealed. I'm Jeremy Keil, and we're here to turn your retirement savings into retirement income. Today, we're talking about how to build your wealth. And I've got this article from Kiplinger magazine, 11 ways to grow, 11 ways to build your wealth. Thinking of retirement, though, it's not so much about building your wealth, perhaps, but preserving your wealth. So I'm going to go through the article here, see what wisdom we can get from the article, perhaps as a way to help your kids build their wealth to get to the point where you are, but also how does it apply to us now hitting retirement and preserving that wealth, getting the most out of your wealth, generating income for retirement. So they give us a lot of great ideas, 11 different ideas here. First one is invest early and often. That's probably how you got to the way you are. That's how you got to your level of success heading towards retirement. Is you started early, you kept on going in retirement, you kept on saving towards your retirement, paycheck after paycheck. Thinking of the corollary of how that works once you're actually in retirement, I would say that's about the idea that you try not to sell at a low point. You're trying to stay invested towards the future. I like the idea when you hit retirement, anytime really, as you project out when do you need your money? That's the first question you ask yourself when you're investing is when do you need the money? When do I need this money back? If you need the money in the short term, find short term type investments. If you need money down the road in the long term, find long term type of investments. Kind of the retirement version of invest early and often is stay invested in the long term. And the way that you do that is by having short term money available. The second idea is to keep investment costs low. Now, that's an interesting situation in that a lot of the times when you hit retirement, your biggest investment account is your 401k. I saw a study once that said that 90% of 401k investors believe they aren't paying any costs, any fees at all on their 401k. I can tell you that's not the case. You're paying something on your 401k investments. And it'd be worthwhile digging into the investments you're using within your 401k, the investments that your investment advisor is using to see what those investment costs are. Kind of a misconception I see sometimes is people see that they're paying their investment advisor, and thankfully that's nice. If you work with a fiduciary financial advisor, you ought to be seeing that advisory costs show up on your statements, perhaps every quarter or monthly, so you can see what those costs are. But a lot of times, the actual costs of the investments the advisor has put you in, you don't see those investment costs. They're kind of built within the investments. It's called an expense ratio. So that's a good question to ask your investment advisor if you are working with one is what is the expense ratio? How much am I paying for the investments? Knowing that is well worthwhile, a way towards driving your investment costs lower. Step three towards building your wealth is prioritize your retirement. You might be thinking, wait a second, I'm already in retirement. I'm heading towards retirement. Of course, I'm prioritizing my retirement. How do I go about doing that even more? Well, a lot of the advice that Kiplinger gives is really focused on the idea of matching, getting the matching funds out of your employer. When you hit 50, 55, 60, that's still an important thing. I'd say perhaps you might already be doing that, but a way to prioritize your retirement as you're getting closer towards retirement is look into the additional contributions you can put into your accounts, those catch up contributions they're talking about. Just because you've been doing well over time, it doesn't mean you couldn't do better with your savings. And I think what I've seen often is you hit 50, 55, your kids have moved out of the house or graduated from college. You've got a little bit less expenses. You got more room in your budget, and taking some of that extra room and putting it towards your retirement through catch-up contributions is a way to keep prioritizing your retirement as you grow closer towards your retirement. The fourth suggestion that Kiplinger gives is to save for other goals, which is interesting. You think through as you hit retirement, you might be saying, well, this is my one goal is retirement, but I'd encourage you to think of not just I've got this big dollar amount I'm trying to get into, have $1 million when I hit retirement, but what is it going to turn into? What type of income is that going to turn into? That's the first step of the retirement master plan process that I take my clients through is to figure out what are you going to actually spend your money on in retirement. And usually you want to look at your take home pay, the amount that you're spending every single month. But as you're planning out and seeing what you're going to be spending in retirement, think through what are my healthcare costs going to be? What are my tax costs going to be? Is there some other goal I have besides I want $1 million at retirement or I need 7 grand a month? Perhaps you're planning for a big kind of bucket list type of trip when you hit retirement. Perhaps you're planning on paying down your mortgage. So oftentimes as you're heading towards retirement, it's like you think there's just one goal there. It's worthwhile to think of what are those specific goals that maybe aren't going to last your entire lifetime. Maybe in a way, one and done type of goals that you have on there. uh, Big suggestion that Kiplinger has when you're talking about the saving for other goals is really more around getting the most interest you can out of what you're putting towards those other goals, which is why it's worth looking into high yield savings accounts. If you're trying to save for something a year or so from now and you've got that money in the bank, I see this quite often. You've got your money in your savings account. I think the average savings account is close to 0.5% in interest. Why not have that money in a high yield savings account, perhaps getting 4% or more in interest? So it's not just so much, let me plan for, save for that goal, but let's get a little bit extra interest on there. Or maybe the goal is you want to help your grandkids with their college savings. I've seen that quite often where parents, grandparents, they just kind of set money aside for their kids, for the grandkids. Uh, Take a look at the college savings plans that are out there. Quite often, not only can you set the money aside for the kids and allow that growth to grow tax deferred. But then when the kids take it out for college, it's tax free to them, tax free to you, as long as you follow the rules. And often you get a tax break as you put the money in. So it's good, even though you're planning for retirement, you may be in retirement, to think, what are my individual goals? And are there ways I can get some added benefit out of that? Am I saving up for a specific thing and can I get better interest through a high yield savings account? Or am I saving money specifically for college? Can I get a college credit, a college tax break by making use of the different college accounts that are out there? So, the number 5 suggestion from Kiplinger on how to grow and build your wealth is to stick to a budget. You might have heard me before, kind of knocking budgets in a way. I knock budgets in a way for 2 reasons. One is that a lot of times people feel that it's just so cumbersome to create the budget. They feel as if creating the budget is what they need to do in the first step of retirement planning. They don't do the budget and they just ignore the rest of the retirement planning. So there's a little danger there. The other part is every time I've seen a budget for retirement, it's been wrong. Kind of start from zero and build up your budget of here's my bills that I'm expecting. And every budget I've seen, it's like you think you're never going out to eat, you're never taking cash from the ATM and just spending it out of your pocket. Nothing ever happens. You never break down. Your car never breaks down, right? These budgets are interesting in that they don't often match reality. And if you create a budget from scratch and you're planning on using that in your retirement planning, I'd encourage you to look at a different way of setting your budget and just thinking about what income you'd be spending in retirement. And that's the first start, taking a look at your take home pay. Quite often, the money that comes into your checking account is the money that gets spent. So if you're wondering, what is my budget going to be in retirement? The first step is to look at what you're spending already. And the easiest way to see what you're spending already is to look at what shows up in your checking account. So don't let the prospect of, oh my goodness, I've got to create this budget. It's going to take a long amount of time to figure out what I need to spend in retirement. Don't let that be a problem. Just first take a look at your take home pay. What goes in your checking account usually gets spent. That's the first step in looking at your spending needs in retirement. Now, number 6, halfway through, is pay down your debt. Put that in the middle. I think that's a great place for it to be, where quite often it's the debt, it's the overspending that gets you into trouble, whether you're trying to build your wealth or you've already got it there. Quite often, you got to the point in your life where you've built up some savings because you've done the number one thing. You've spent less than you've earned. That's how you build and grow your wealth, is just spend less than you earn. You could have taken all 11 and just said there's one thing. If there's one thing to do to build your wealth, it's to spend less than you earn. Now, number 7 is polish your credit. And quite often, when we're talking about improving your credit, it's more like improve your credit score. I'd say when you get to 60-ish or so, a lot of times your credit score, your credit habits are already set. But the biggest question I get around this is the idea of identity theft protection. How do I protect myself in case my identity gets stolen? I found the easiest way to do that. There's identity theft protection services. A lot of the credit reporting agencies do that. They cost maybe $100 a year, I see, and they'll give you alerts if somebody is opening an account in your name. Hopefully, it's you. They also have with that, if you pay for the higher level of service there, and you're paying something for it, they'll have um, coverage to help pay for the cost in case somebody um, steals your identity. Another piece of it, if you're trying to worry about identity theft protection, is you've got your phone, right? You've got your phone and those multi-factor authentications, setting up the two-way proof. So it's not just your password, but also getting a code. There's different ways that you can make sure that you're protecting your accounts. And of course, you end up with hundreds of different passwords. So I like the idea of using a password management. So I suppose there's two things to do to keep your credit safe, is to use a password manager and look at identity theft protection. Now, number 8's an interesting one. It says consider a home purchase. Of course, I like how they use the word consider. It's something I would do as well, because buying a home is not necessarily the best thing for everybody. Yet at the same time, you look at the research and the studies, quite often people who own homes have a higher net worth than those that don't have own a home. And it's tough to tell the causation. Is it buying the home that caused a higher net worth? Is it the higher net worth that allowed you to purchase a home? It's an interesting conundrum, and I'm going to relate this one towards the idea of, should you be buying your vacation home or should you keep on renting? I've got a podcast I just released about that, of should you buy your vacation home or should you keep on renting? Because it feels like you're just wasting money, right? You spend $5,000 a month, you're heading down south for 2 months, you just wasted 10 grand, right? Well, look at the opposite side of it. Well, how much are your property taxes going to be if you own the home? What's your insurance going to be if you own the home? And what I find quite often is when you go and rent a place down south for a month or two, you're not buying the furniture, right? You go buy a home and you end up spending a lot more money that's not in your spreadsheet, in that you upgrade your appliances, you buy the new furniture. Sometimes you end up with two of everything. You have the car down there, the car up here. This idea of buying a home, buying your vacation home, there's a lot more expenses that show up than you might think, than you might have initially put in your spreadsheet. So I'm gonna put a link to the show notes. This is probably the number one topic, and we do a podcast every week here, and I got more comments ASAP. Like I show up to work 8:30 on a Wednesday. I got so many emails already from clients and listeners who are saying, yeah, I'm so glad you did that podcast. So when you're thinking of your wealth, think of, what do we do for vacations? Am I going to be buying a vacation home, or perhaps keep on renting? Listen to that podcast about my thoughts and things you ought to consider. Number 9 is an interesting one, right? Kiplinger, writing to a broad audience. They're maybe skewing a little younger here with how to build your wealth. We're thinking, how do we preserve your wealth? It says boost your income. And of course, they're thinking of a raise, right? You're 45 years old. Perhaps you want to ask for a raise. But I'm thinking here, you're 60 years old and you're thinking about retirement. We've got people who tell us that, I'd love to keep on working. I love my job except for all the paperwork. I love my job except I wish I could do it 3 days a week instead of 5. And they've got this thought that they can't. Maybe they've seen it before, that everyone else at their job, at their career, at their company, um, went 5 days a week until they went to zero. And they just wish they could do the fun stuff, part of their job, the interactions with their clients or their patients, the analysis that they like to do without all the extra reporting that they have to do on there. And I tell you, it's hard to find workers. It's hard to find good workers. And you got to where you are because you're a good, conscientious employee, does well for your company. You save less than you make. You save some money out of your paycheck. You're doing all right, which means you've got kind of a position of power. You don't necessarily have to be at work if you've saved well enough. And going into your work and saying, here's what I like to do. Maybe it's not asking for a raise. It's more likely when you're heading towards retirement saying, I like to transition into retirement. I like to work 3 days instead of 5. I like to focus on uh, caring for my clients and not the other things that I don't care for. That's a way to boost your income because you can keep on working, hopefully boost your enjoyment, boost your happiness too, because you're doing the things that you like and you're not taking money out of your investments. And maybe you're doing it in a way that still helps you qualify for health insurance. That's something that people are concerned about all the time. Now, number 10, this is really the reason why I wanted to talk about this article from Kiplinger is number 10, their suggestion on how to build your wealth is to preserve your wealth by making sure you have the right level of insurance coverage. That's what we're doing this spring. Every 3 years, we go through and review our clients' homeowners insurance, auto insurance, and umbrella insurance. And we're looking at it for some different things. Uh, Half the time, it's because you don't even know what you have for homeowners, auto insurance, and umbrella insurance. Just reviewing, having somebody else review it, pointing it out, and asking a question, why is it this way? Why is it a different way? That'll help you make sure that you know what's going on with your insurance coverages. But thinking of kind of your ongoing monthly cost of insurance, quite often we see lower deductibles where maybe you have a $500 deductible on your car insurance instead of a $1,000 deductible on your car insurance. And then when you take a look at it, you realize you're paying $300 extra every year for that privilege of having a lower deductible. Well, if you're paying $300 extra for a $500 deductible, a couple of things are going on. One is you're basically telling the car insurance company, you're basically making the bet here that you're going to have a car accident. You're going to have some sort of claim once every year and a half. I really hope you're not having a car claim once every year and a half. So you're more likely overpaying for the privilege to have that lower deductible. And the other part of it is too, chances are if you've built your wealth, you're heading towards retirement, and you end up having some sort of car accident, car claim, even homeowners insurance claim, whatever that is, having that deductible to $1,000 as an example, instead of $500 as your deductible. We see that quite often. You're only exposing yourself to $500 extra potential cost. Chances are you can afford that $500 if something bad happens, and chances are something bad isn't happening every year and a half, 2 years, which is really, when you do the math, quite often what you're basically planning for in your lower deductible $500. You also want to take a look at your homeowners, your auto umbrella, see how they coordinate. Perhaps your homeowners and auto coverage go to a certain level, and then your umbrella uh, goes up from there. A lot of people are asking me about umbrella coverage. Should we have umbrella coverage? How much should I have in umbrella insurance coverage? The general thought is whatever your net worth happens to be, that's roughly how much you got to have in total umbrella or liability coverage. You might end up with $500,000 of coverage through your homeowners and auto insurance. Maybe you have $1 million umbrella coverage policy on top of that. If your net worth's about 1.5 million, there you go. You're well covered. And if your net worth's higher than that, think through, do I want to make sure I'm more protected? Part of building your wealth is preserving your wealth and having the right level of coverage at the top end. A lot of times when you look at your coverages, that deductible piece, the cost of the deductible for a $500 difference, $500 to $1,000 might be a few $100. And it might be the same few $100 to boost your coverage on the high end, the liability. What if you get sued coverage by $500,000? the problems with hurting your wealth getting is more on the top end, getting more money taken away from you on the top end than to, oh my goodness, I got to come up with $500 because of that deductible. Now, number 11 from Kiplinger is to get help from a pro. And I'd say that pro is along the lines of whatever it is you're looking for, get help from a professional in that area. If you are looking for guidance on retirement planning, go find a retirement planning professional. If you're looking for guidance on college savings accounts, look for a college savings account professional. And chances are, when you're listening to Retirement Revealed, you're looking for your retirement planning guidance. I've got a place you can go. It's called 5stepretirementplan.com. It walks you through the 5 simple steps that I take my clients through to help them create their retirement master plan. So you can head to 5stepretirementplan.com, see the videos of how I take people through the 5 steps you need to create your retirement master plan. And you can do that on your own, or perhaps give us a call. Be happy to help out in any way. Now, those were the 11 ways that Kiplinger says you ought to build your wealth, and I think as well preserve your wealth. Send me any questions that you have. You can head over to retirement-reveal.com. Let me know, what do you think? Did Kiplinger forget one? Did I forget an idea of how to build your wealth? What questions do you have? Send me a message through retirement-reveal.com. Thank you for listening to the Retirement Revealed podcast. We believe if you know more about your money, you will feel better about your money and you will make better money decisions. Hi, I'm Jeremy Keil with the Keil Financial Partners. If you'd like to see how we help our clients get more income, pay less in taxes, and avoid big retirement mistakes, head on over to keilfp.com. That's KEILFP.com.